All right, welcome back. You've joined us on the next installment of the Doepfer A110 VCO and Doepfer A145 audio demonstration. Last time we were demonstrating a little bit of frequency modulation via the CV1, CV2. This time around we're going to be demonstrating some modulation, but to the Pulsewidth CVs found here on the A110 standard VCO. So we're going to do a short review of some of the information about our friend over here, the Doepfer A145 LFO, just so that if you're coming into it fresh right now, you'll have a little bit of an understanding of what we're about to jump into. So right now we have this module over here, and this module outputs these various waves. Triangle, sine, saw, and inverted saw. And we're going to use these waves in the low frequency range, that's where we can't hear it as humans, to modulate or to change the way that the standard VCO performs. In the previous demo, we were modulating the pitch, so we were using these waves to change the pitch of the A110. This time around, we're going to be adjusting the pulse width of the Doepfer A110. So let's do a little brief review of pulse width. So pulse width is going to be found in a square wave. And since it is a square wave, just like you would think of as a square, squares can have different narrowness or wideness. So let's hear what pulse width all by itself sounds like. So I'm going to patch a square wave into my mixer right over here. Go to input 1. So that is our pulse wave, square wave. And that's just a regular square wave. And so let's hear what happens when I adjust the pulse width. And then it goes all the way up into the range where we can't hear it anymore. So you can see it happens over here on the other side as well. So all the way counterclockwise, you kind of lose the ability to hear the pulse width, and there it's very, very tightly audible. And then we can go all the way to the other side. And then somewhere in the middle you can find a little place where you like it. And so what we're going to be attempting to demonstrate here is what these different waveforms will sound like when they adjust the Pulsewidth CV1. So my manually adjusting it is actually changing the pulse width as I move it left and right. That's sort of a manual adjustment or manual modulation, if you will. But this time around, we're going to have the A145 take care of that for us. And we're going to start up here at the top. We're going to start with an inverted saw. So I'm just going to patch the inverted saw. And then I'm going to patch straight into the Pulsewidth CV. So when this goes in, it's going to be moving this setting according to what I have it at, according to the waveform of the A145. So here we go. Okay, so that's inverted saw over to Pulsewidth CV1. And then I can adjust my setting manually. So the A145 is still modulating the VCO, but now it's modulating this setting rather than the original setting that we had it at, which was about right there. Okay, now I'm going to go in the opposite direction. We should hear something very similar to what we had a little while ago. but it is subtly different. Okay, so I can bring it down even further. There we go, coming back to 12 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to unpatch that. And now we're going to go into a different waveform. So I'm going to patch into the one immediately below there, Saw Wave, and hear what that sounds like. So that is Saw Wave in the low frequency range, modulating Pulsewidth CV1 of the A110 standard VCO. And again, I have my dial here where I can manually adjust the Pulsewidth setting so that my modulation effect will change what it's changing. Now another place I can sort of adjust my sound right now is over here at the frequency setting of the A145 LFO. So right now I'm at about 4 o'clock on the frequency setting of the A145 LFO, but I can adjust that. So if I bring it down, it's still a saw wave that's modulating the Pulsewidth setting. It's just that this time it's pulsing or it's moving at a slower rate. And I still have the capability of adjusting the Pulsewidth manually. And then I can bring the frequency down a little bit more if I want to. And even further down. Back to the center. That's about where we started. Let's hear just real quick, all the way in the counterclockwise position of our frequency and hear what that sounds like. Well, maybe not all the way counterclockwise, because then it might take a minute or so to cycle. But there we have a fairly decent sweep. Okay, so that's my saw wave. Now we're going to go to sine wave. So we've gone through inverted saw so far and saw. Now we're going to go to sine. So this is a sine wave modulating the Pulsewidth of the Doepfer A110. And that's the frequency of the sine wave that's modulating the Pulsewidth right now. And if I want to, I can bring that up a little bit. And I can bring it up a little bit further if I want. Till it goes off into that area where we can't hear it anymore. There we go. And it comes back, and it goes away, and it goes away. And then we can turn up the frequency even faster, all the way to the max. Maybe adjust the pulse width as well. so that's our friend the sine wave. Let's try a triangle wave now. I'm going to bring the frequency about the midpoint. That's where we kind of started on some of the others. And patch this triangle wave. There we go. So we're at the mid position on the pulse width of the standard VCO, and we're at the midpoint of the frequency on the A145 LFO. So let's go in the opposite direction this time. We're going to bring the frequency down of the LFO. So we heard it about the 9 o'clock position. Now let's go on the opposite side around the 3 o'clock position. So that's what we have so far. Now let's maybe go in and change the pulse width setting a little bit. Maybe go a little lower. And the further we go this way, the longer the audible separation is going to be there. And that's with our frequency all the way at the top. And then we're going to bring it back to the midpoint. Maybe our pulse width as well, bring it back to the midpoint. Okay, so patch that, and we'll move on to the square wave. So square wave modulating Pulsewidth CV1. So there you go. This one's not as exciting, at least in my opinion, because as we spoke about in one of the previous demos, the square wave, if you remember how we were talking just a little bit earlier about a square, it has 4 sides. It's, for the most part, straight on each side. So square wave is the same way. It's straight at the top and then straight at the bottom. That's what this little symbol represents. So what's happening is it'll start at a constant level and then stop. And then start at a constant level and then stop. So that's what we're hearing right there. And as we adjust the frequency, it's making that happen just a little bit faster. All the way to the very top. Okay. And so then I can go all the way back. Maybe go to the low frequency range. And so that's the idea of what happens with the pulse width modulation with these specific waveforms in the low frequency range going into CV1. I'll bring my frequency back to the center. And now we're going to go into modulating pulse width but at CV2 and see if that's a little bit different. So, since we left off on the square wave, let's start again on the square wave. So we'll just kind of do this to the bottom and then up. We're going to patch into Pulsewidth CV2. I'm going to bring the amount of CV2 all the way down. So when I plug it in, I'm not going to hear anything. And I confirm that. I don't hear any modulation going on at Pulsewidth CV2. So now I'm going to bring it up slightly. So it's sending just a small amount of this square wave modulation to pulse width of the square wave from the A110. And if I bring the frequency up, modulation is still occurring, it's just not being added as much to the pulse width of the standard VCO. If we wanted to hear it in the identical manner of what it was in Pulsewidth CV1, we could bring CV2 all the way to the top. So that's exactly what it should sound like at Pulsewidth CV1. So let's verify that. Look at CV2. So you get just a little bit more room where you can adjust the sound to your taste. Okay, let's bring the frequency down a little bit and hear what that sounds like. Frequency about the midpoint. Okay, I think we got the idea. Let's go to the triangle wave now, and we'll patch it into CV1. Let me bring my CV2 level down, and patching into triangle wave. So we don't hear anything because the volume on the Pulsewidth CV2 is all the way down. So we're going to bring it up just a little bit. There we are. Okay, so now we can hear what the triangle wave going into Pulsewidth CV2 sounds like at about the 11 o'clock setting. Go up a little bit higher. And then now that we've got that sort of in our ears, we can bring up the frequency just a tad, maybe to the 3 o'clock position. Okay, let's try the frequency all the way over at about the 9 o'clock position. So that's our triangle wave. Bring the Pulsewidth all the way down. And we're back to our regular square wave. Now let's try sine wave again. Going into Pulsewidth CV2 this time. So let's go all the way to the max, and then we'll hear what it would sound like coming in CV1. So that would be the fully modulated sound of Pulsewidth CV, just like you would hear in Pulsewidth CV1. And if I bring it about the midpoint, you still get the same modulation, just not as much going into the Pulsewidth. Okay, let's try bringing the frequency up just a little bit. So we're about the 4 o'clock position. And let's try it about 12 o'clock. And let's go over to about 9 o'clock. So we got that. We're going to bring CV2 all the way down, back to our regular square wave. Now let's go on with a saw into CV2. And now let's bring up the volume a little bit. Actually, let's start this time, bring the frequency all the way up, and then we'll slowly bring in our CV. That one was a little bit different, but same idea. Frequency of the modulating LFO is going into here at CV2, and we're adjusting the level up all the way to the maximum level of modulation coming in at CV2, or we can use it at about the midpoint level of modulation coming in Pulsewidth CV2. We can also move back to the A145 and adjust the frequency to slightly vary the sound if we want to. So that's our saw wave. Going into Pulsewidth CV2, we're going to bring the level all the way down. No modulation occurring. We're going to unpatch saw wave, patch into inverted saw. Again, we don't hear anything at CV2 because our level of modulation is all the way down, so I can increase the level of modulation to about the midpoint. And now I get the inverted saw modulating A110 VCO. And I'm at the midpoint for the frequency, about 12 o'clock. So if I want to bring the frequency of that modulation up, I can bring it to about the 3 o'clock position. Or I can go a little bit nuts and bring the frequency all the way up. And then if I want to, I can also bring it all the way down to the other side. Well, not all the way down, but pretty close. Alright, moving right along. We're going to unpatch that, and we're going to leave our square wave plugged in. For this next segment, we're going to actually demonstrate what it sounds like to modulate the standard VCO, but this time around, we're going to use the high frequency, or the audible frequency, of the A145.